Judges 13 through 16, the story of Samson, the last judge mentioned in our book. The story of Samson basically takes place in the Sorek Valley. That's one of these east-west valleys that run between the coastal plain and the central ridge that Israel lived in at this point. The tribe of Dan was supposed to occupy this entire area, but they had been pushed by Philistine pressure inland to the point that we meet the story, or the story begins, in this little town called Zorah. Manoah and his wife are childless. They're from the tribe of Dan. And they're told by the angel of the Lord that they would have a boy. He would be a lifelong Nazirite. Now, we're not sure what exactly that means. Again, we hear about it in Numbers chapter 6. But again, most of the laws, the Mosaic law, had been thrown away by this point by the people of Israel. And it turns out that the Nazirite idea, the votive idea of dedicating oneself to the service of a deity, that goes way back in time in the ancient world, well beyond Israel, before Israel, and it was called a Nazirite vow. And so again, what the idea would be, it wouldn't be lost on Manoah and his wife, that their son would be called to serve their deity full-time. Lifelong service dedicated to this God. Dedicated even to the point that even the hair on a person's body, for example, and again this was well known at the time, that all the hair on a person's body would be part of their body and thus it could not be shaved. It would make them appear from a distance even very odd, because they were completely given to the service of their deity. Well, that's the beginning of Samson's life. Most of his stories revolve women. He goes down to the little city, the little village, right there in the Sorek Valley, at the mouth of the valley, called Timnah. He meets there a Philistine woman. He wants to marry her. In fact, he does, but things go sour almost immediately. He loses her. She's killed. He then burns the fields in the area, and that's how the story begins. Obviously, there is no war at this point between the Philistines and the Danites, but there's tension always because of these kinds of personal squabbles. We meet then Samson going down to the city of Gaza, one of the main Philistine cities along the coast. There he meets a harlot. The Philistines think they've got him, but in a show of strength, he picks up the city gates, rips them off their hinges, and carries them possibly all the way to Hebron, which is 40 miles away. Again, just to show how strong he is. By God's ability. This is, again, supernatural strength that we're talking about. The last story, of course, is Delilah. She seems to be a Philistine woman living in or near Timnah. She's a Philistine through and through. She sides with the Philistines in playing this cat-and-mouse game with Samson, and figuring out that if his hair was cut, then God would allow him to be like any other human, because, again, that vow had been symbolically broken. And so after his hair is cut, he awakes as a normal man then with no supernatural strength, and he's taken back to Gaza, where he's put in a Philistine temple dedicated to the god Dagon. And it's important to mention him now because he will come up later. He is a god or a deity that goes back 1,000 years, and a very popular deity, even more popular than Baal in the ancient literature. And he is there in that temple, and again in one last call, and he does call very clearly upon Yahweh. He mentions him by name, and he says, "O Lord Yahweh, Adonai Yahweh, could you please give me strength one more time to destroy those who are worshiping you, this rival deity." So his life does seem to be as torrid, as messed up, and as behaviorally messy as his life is. He is mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 32, again because the issue was one of loyalty, not behavior, and his loyalty was toward one God as opposed to the most popular deity of that time.